Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another Movement LA meeting. Today's meeting will be Laura Eisenhower, Extraterrestrials, and the Eisenhower Legacy. Laura Eisenhower, the great-granddaughter of President Dwight Eisenhower, is on a profound mission to continue the work begun by her great-grandfather. As a child, Laura had several encounters with ETs, during which she was given messages about her future mission in life. Informed by these, Laura is engaged in carrying on the Eisenhower legacy, dedicating herself to exposing dark aspects of the military-industrial complex. Laura has exquisite intuitive gifts, which are deeply connected with the Sophia, the divine feminine energies of love and wisdom. In this talk, she will reveal how branches of the global power elite have been using quantum access technologies and mind control techniques to further an agenda designed to suppress humanity's awareness of its true origins and full potential. In 2006, a sophisticated attempt was made by trained intelligence agents to recruit Laura to move into a government-run survival colony in Mars. She will tell us how she responded to this peculiar proposition and what she discovered about the Mars base in the process. On her own words, as I grew up, I could sense that I was completing this battle that has ancient roots. When Hitler died and the Nazis lost power, the entities, including those that were ET extraterrestrials, did not. They continued to find hosts and create agreements with people who were a part of the race of the patriarchs known as the global elite, who want to run things through fear tactics, control, and the suppression of the Sophia, or the essence of the divine feminine. Eisenhower is a strong advocate for human rights and self-determination. She will also share information about treaties between ETs and our government, the existence of civilizations on remote star systems, and the negative influence of the archons, the leaders of the underground forces, so to speak, on the human affairs. Laura has an excellent base of knowledge related to natural systems, frontier health research, ufology, ancient history, alchemy, and metaphysics. She has degrees or certifications in science, wilderness expedition, leadership, and natural healing. She is a mythic cosmologist, global strategist, clairvoyant healer, earth advocate, and artist. As we are all aware, we're in a period of significant upheaval on the planet. Laura will share with us her insights into how we can use this time of great transition to help create a positive future for all humanity. Please help me welcome Laura Eisenhower. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here. I know I'm a lot more simple than that bio sounded, but there's just a lot going on, and we're all really tapped into it. So my version of it has an interesting story attached to it, which revealed so much to me, and it really links to a lot that I understood as a child, and now I've been able to put a lot of dots together. So on top of surviving this path, now I'm trying to survive articulating it, and I'll do my best. So that's my website for anybody who wants to contact me. I do readings, and all my work is pretty much there. And what's funny is I made a big point to make sure I started with my background and some of the insights that I was getting when I was a child. So I thought, well, maybe I'll just have a picture to remind me, which would be a childhood picture. So it's a little embarrassing, I realize, when I recognize that it's there, but here, let's see, there. Anyway, I didn't expect it to be so big, but even at that age, I knew what I came to Earth to do. I know that sounds maybe normal to some people and pretty wild to others, but when you kind of wake up in a family like the Eisenhower family, your head starts to processing right away, because it's just something that involves a lot more than just, our family dynamic. It involves, the greater community of humanity. as far as decisions that have been made and sort of a karmic trail that's been left behind. And so growing up in my family, I was noticing that we weren't exactly seeing eye to eye with certain things, but at that age, of course, I'm just a kid, so we were seeing eye to eye enough, just me getting my needs met as a child. But I was having encounters, I was having visitations, not only with a particular extraterrestrial race, but with Eisenhower. And I'll just sort of give you some idea of what the extraterrestrial race showed me. They seem to be Arcturian, and that's what I've grasped from that point on. And they were very luminous, very benevolent. And what would happen at nighttime was, things would disappear, the walls would disappear, and I would go on these journeys and I would do these crazy things. I would kind of float out of bed and I would do these neat things, and I shared a room with my sister, and I would, tell her, "Are you seeing this? Like, wake up." And I didn't really get much confirmation about those conversations till later. When I brought it up, she said, "Oh my gosh, I thought I was dreaming, but you always were like, trying to wake me up to look at things." And even one time when I was kind of like, I don't know, doing something really weird. So as children, we have, incredible abilities, and right away they're kind of ripped from us. So when we try and communicate them, very often they're invalidated, or they're sort of, brushed into something our imagination must have created. But this particular extraterrestrial race really stood out because it was very, it just was locked into my memory for, that point onward. And what happened was I was taken to this shore near these ruins, and they showed me this viewfinder, and they told me to look in the viewfinder, and they said, "When you look in it, you'll see something so beautiful, and you're here to create this. And your job is to not give up on this or to ever lose your connection with this, because it'll be ripped away from you, and you'll, to the point of forgetting it, and the point of really losing yourself." So I was really encouraged to hold on to this information, and for a good number of years I was being very prepared for what I was in for. And so my childhood consisted of incredible experiences and just very high vibration connections with other beings and guides, and also my great-grandfather, which I thought was interesting. And so what I was being prepared for was kind of, being thrown off my mission or off my path. And this is what they've attempted to do to all of us, and this has been going on for thousands of years. And how, they attempt to do this is by just making sure that we do not follow our passion and our dreams, and we become controlled and easily guided into being something maybe that we're not. And a lot of us rebel against it, and a lot of us maybe go along with it and wake up one day. I was not going to have anything to do with it starting from day one, so I was one of those really challenging children. But because Ike was sort of in the background, it gave me kind of a link to the family, to where it wasn't just me being rebellious against the programmings or controls in our society. It was something that was so true to my mission that losing it was a loss of life for myself. And so it became a life or death mission, battle, just to pretty much stay in the physical realm, to stay in my physical body, and to retain this information and this knowledge and truth. Well, what they prepared me for was that I wouldn't be able to do that very well. I got ripped out of, my soul pretty much left for about 20 years or so, and I journeyed outside of the physical domain into all these different dimensional gateways, I guess you could call them, and worked through busting through what I call gatekeepers. And this is the matrix of the mother womb. This is where so much of our creative energy is suppressed and controlled. And so a lot of my life consisted of going into this area to reclaim power, to break free of these forces that I call the archons. And they come in the form of not just archons or beings of a lower order, they manifest through humans, and that's where I confronted them the most. The beings that I was connecting to weren't dark entities, they were light entities, but the humans I was connecting to were working with dark entities. So this was the basis of my childhood, and when I communicated with Ike, and I wasn't really, verbal conversations that I can remember, but his spirit was present with me, like he knew that there was something I was here to do that he was going to help me with, and that we were going to work side by side. And so what's funny is somebody made this picture of us, which is just side by side, but this is kind of like how I grew up. I kind of grew up with invisible forces validating my mission and experience, and Ike was one of them. So it's interesting going to family gatherings, feeling this incredible alliance with somebody in the family, but still being the total black sheep that didn't make sense to anybody, that was the wayward kid, the rebellious kid, that couldn't quite articulate that I was really here to stop the military-industrial complex. And that was very significant to the Eisenhower family. And I'm thinking, I should get a lot of support for this. But It's not that I didn't get support, I just didn't get the verbal support. I got a lot of love and support just in my journey, keeping me together, you know, phone calls, family gatherings, and this and that. From a distance I got support, but never really the conversations where somebody would say, yeah, you know, Eisenhower did meet with extraterrestrials, and, you know, let's give you some thing to prepare you for all the rumors that are going to be launched at you when you grow up, you know, with the Eisenhower name. Well, I avoided the Eisenhower name till I got a little bit older. My father joined the priesthood, so I couldn't really use his last name because priests aren't supposed to have kids. The Pope or Bishop gave him permission, even though he had already had children. My mom remarried, and I took my stepdad's last name, and that ended up falling away, and then my name was legally changed. But I didn't start using it until I was ready to express what I'm here to express, because him and I, in a sense, are allies on this journey. And what I was able to uncover is stuff that my family is not able to uncover or reveal to this generation that I'm of. My sisters and my cousins, we never heard anything, and we're sort of left to just sort of assume that he must have gone to a dentist appointment, and we'll continue to just appreciate the war hero that he is, and this extraterrestrial craziness is just for somebody else to deal with. Well, I'm the only family member in the whole Eisenhower family who's publicly speaking about the treaties, the extraterrestrials, and the deeper agenda, and I just don't talk to them about it because there is some level of agreement that has happened that I am not a part of. So I don't have any agreements with any beings or family lines with the government, and I don't have any agreements with the shadow government because I never worked for them. So it protects me to a certain degree to not have any agreements. The other stuff, you know, yes, I've been extremely targeted. Somehow I made it through, and so it's absolutely and totally surreal that I can stand here and even talk about this stuff. So when I was talking about going into this kind of like leaving for about 20 years or so, it's because once you're a child and you kind of realize what's around you, it's not really the world that you expect it to be. I couldn't handle it, so it's not that I was forced out, I kind of left, but at the same time, you know, I was in a way forced out, but I use it to my advantage. It's like if I can't be here, I'm going to address the forces that aren't allowing me to be here, rather than just be lost and scattered and broken forever, or being controlled and carrying some facade or some energy that might be expected of me that would be the easy route. You know, take advantage of all the opportunities of being in the Eisenhower family and avoid this other mission. There was just no way. There was no way. I could have had a much easier life, sure, but easier for what? You know, just a couple of years and then NWO, New World Order, you know, all of a sudden appears and what was once fun is now, you know, being an agent for the dark side. I was going to have nothing to do with it. And this is what's happened to the Eisenhower family. It's been somewhat infiltrated by the dark forces, and this is what they do. They feed on our hopes and our fears. And so I truly believe that they took advantage of Eisenhower when he was becoming interested in fighting the Nazis. Once they saw his determination to take down this corruption, very soon after, he was brought into the American government and really was under the wing of Rockefeller and encouraged to take on this role, which seemed to be a great role for somebody who wants to create change. And little did he know that he was becoming president of an institution that was already under Draco-reptilian control, and he would be set up to be a pawn in a way to continuing treaties with the government. So as a child, you know, having visitations with him and then a higher race, and then, you know, standing in the grocery store watching the magazines and seeing Weekly World News where Eisenhower is rumored to have had contact with extraterrestrials, you know, that's when I began to scratch my head. I mean, this is Weekly World News. This is about as ridiculous of news as you can get. You know, the kind of thing, you know, like bat people, you know, stole, like robbed a bank or something. And actually that could happen in our reality now that we know how many species are amongst us. But when it's in Weekly World News, you know, most people think it's nonsense. So I kind of saw that and took it to heart, like, you know, I really do think that there's some extraterrestrial connection with Eisenhower because I'm having all these experiences. And later in life, you know, all these researchers like William Cooper and all these others have come forward saying that this is more than likely not a rumor, and that's when my work really started to come alive. Like, okay, I can really start to put these pieces together, which connects, of course, to the Mars recruitment and how Alternative 3 is connected to the Greys and the reptilian agenda. So that's kind of like, as I grew up, sort of dealing with the preparation, dealing with kind of like the esoteric, kind of out of the body, kind of energetic breaking free sort of scenarios, then it was time to deal with it in the physical, because energy always happens first, and then one deals with it in the physical. So I was kind of dealing with it energetically so that I was really ready to deal with it physically in the physical world. Consciousness and spirit always moves quicker than matter. Matter takes a long time to catch up. So dealing with it energetically gave me the tools, gave me the strength that I needed to know exactly what to do when the so-called controllers and the Mars recruiters came into my path. So this is just a little bit of a background about how this all connects to extraterrestrials, treaties with the government, and my recruitment. The reason I'm going all the way back to the beginning is because just to understand this part of it gives us a chance to see the feminine energy within the galactic core as an aspect, the masculine and feminine in the galactic core. There's this is just a little bit of information you can read about aeons and what they represent. And aeons are connected to our higher self. They're connected to the higher extraterrestrial races. They're very benevolent, and they're energy streams that are similar and very connected to Kundalini. So when we're dealing with archons, which are the negative energies and the things that want control, they produce things called archons, which are connected to the lower extraterrestrial races and the lower sort of mentality of rulership and power and control. And the archons hate the higher energies. They hate the feminine energy, they hate the goddess energy because they know she can't be controlled. And as long as there's the earth and as long as there's the feminine, they have that challenge of dealing with a conscious, multidimensional planet that is capable of sustaining a lot of life and allowing that life to evolve into a high state of co-creation with source energy. And so there was a massive competition with the Supreme Being, the Christ Sophia consciousness, the masculine and feminine deities, but particularly the feminine. And this competition is what is basically the root of everything we're dealing with today. It's the idea that if Earth can assist in our evolution, if Gaia is really, this feminine energy that is nurturing and supportive and all about love, then where is there room to control and dominate? And this is where we understand chakras and where the chakra system was created, the archetypes and everything, which I'll get into. But this sort of level of competition is what we're dealing with. And it's the lower creator God. It's not of the higher order, but it's kind of like the lower ego nature, the lower male. And so this is the scenario that we're dealing with on the macro level when we're dealing with the government. We're dealing with governments that are under the control of very malevolent beings. But for us to truly relate to it, we need to understand ourselves and the fact that we're made up of everything in the cosmos, every being, every energy, and it's all within us to decide how we're going to work with it, what we're going to carry within ourselves, and how we choose to participate with this sort of thing that's happening. And the thing is, it's actually here to assist us. But because it's on a need-to-know basis, those that only need to know to be evil can't see the bigger picture. They're only fed the information of how they can control and what they need to do to create as much negative polarity as possible to keep the planet from having balance, because balance and unity does not allow predatory races to infiltrate. So the agenda was, okay, if Mother Earth or if the goddess can't be controlled, the only way that we can get to her is through her children, through humanity, through the beings that are on Earth. As long as we can fool them, then they won't connect to her, and then, the work is easy. And so this has been the agenda, is to completely change the way we perceive the feminine and to control humanity through that. And this is what is connected to our governments, this is what is connected to the treaties, but it's also part of the Draco-Reptilian agenda that basically stated that they were the first beings in the solar system and they are our true creators. And, they are connected to the ancient ones and to Tiamat, but what happened was there was a need to step in and intervene in order to create a scenario to allow humans to go through the cycle of zodiac and a certain level of incarnations to graduate to a level of ascension. And this rescue mission was put in place in order to protect humanity from complete and total takeover of the Draco-Reptilians. But in that attempt, the Anunnaki came about and brought in its own corruption on top of it, which is where the Yahweh, Jehovah, Old Testament comes in, and then how later on the global elite kind of pulled that in and became kind of a huge monster that we're dealing with. And this is all connected to, yes, treaties, the divine feminine, it's all connected. So back when all this was happening, as we hear about Tiamat or Maldek, we hear different things about Maldek and we hear different things about Tiamat. most of the research out there is very contradictory. But we do know that there was a huge explosion that took place that really rattled everything in the cosmos. And this has to do with the fact that these fallen races were at war with each other. They've been at war with each other since the beginning. They still are. But the Tiamat energy produced the asteroid belt. Half of it became Earth and the rest of the heavens. And then the goddess energy morphed into the physical planet in order to keep that consciousness alive to assist us. And so, let me just go to the next one. And so this is all connected to Marduk slaying Tiamat, the demiurge, Yahweh, Enlil, and the desiring of a slave race. Well, this is all going on, but underneath it all, we're dealing with Draco-reptilians as well. And the amount of hybridization that has gone on is so mind-blowing that it's even hard to pinpoint any particular race or to deliver anything that can give the whole picture in an exact way. And I'm sure you can all relate, as fellow researchers, how difficult it can be to put all the pieces together. So my life experience and what I've gone through and what I was told and all the different experiences that I have had have helped give me some insight to put some of these pieces together. So what I share is what I pretty much absolutely know 100%, but the gray areas are where we all hit the gray areas when it comes to kind of, you know, this sort of research that you can get maybe 98% close, but there might be a little bit missing here and there. But what I discovered in the Mars recruitment was that it all had to do with archetypes. Even though this was a part of the global elite and black ops projects, they brought up all these archetypal names. They knew exactly, you know, about the Enki and Enlil and the Tiamat, and I mean, they used all the names because the agent that they set me up with, you know, also used all the names. Actually, we spoke a language that was based on all these names because I spoke that language, but it was under their control. And I'll get into the story of what happened. This is just to describe the archons. And the difference between, like a reptilian, it's a lower octave of Kundalini. And the lower octave of Kundalini means that it's really a third chakra rulership and down. It's like lower chakras. It's all that energy that is not expanding into higher consciousness. Kundalini energy is serpentine, but it expands all the way into the highest levels where we could connect to source. Their mission is to keep us locked into our lower chakras so that we're powerless, so that we're in survival, so that we're, you know, emotionally vulnerable to being controlled. But when we, you know, step up beyond that, that's when we start to reconnect and connect with the real power, the real serpentine energy, the real dragon energy, which is Tiamat. So as much as the Draco-reptilians are trying to bring things back to order before the Anunnaki came, they're fighting a ridiculous battle because they support Tiamat, who actually incarnated into the Anunnaki as the shattered aspects of the goddess and has been working ever since to restore things to that period, but not under their control, but in the universal love and the Gnostic awareness where our knowingness, our enlightenment is what puts things in order, not mind control, not steering things based on, you know, the war on terror and all these false flags that keep us locked into their program that seem like catastrophic events, but they're all planned, they're all pre-planned. And it's to basically take over the role of the supreme being and the supreme agenda, which is that we awaken to who we truly are and we, you know, create like a reality that is utilizing all the tools that we are equipped with. And this is what the technological world does, is it mimics our natural abilities, and then it gives it to us like we need it. And this is what it's done to deities. The religions have, you know, kind of guided us to worship rather than, you know, realize that we are here to awaken the Christ consciousness, Sophia consciousness within. And so, you know, I'm not here to, you know, be all spiritual about everything, but this is what it comes down to when we're dealing with DNA and we're dealing with this agenda. The 11-strand DNA is what they want. That's the Antichrist DNA. And what it does is it puts our planet in the opposite orbit. It keeps us trapped in these time-controlled technologies and in this matrix where, yes, that is enslavement. But, you know, what is enslavement? Our egos enslave us. We enslave ourselves all the time. This is not an outward battle. This is an inward battle. This is something we've inherited that we can deal with in our own lives and in our own consciousness. What we see in the larger stage are all the conditions that we can relate to in our inner life. And so what we see on the outside shouldn't intimidate us. It should just remind us, okay, well, where are we falling prey to that? Where do we live in duality? Where are we stuck in our lower chakras? And where do we buy into things that actually don't help us at all? There's something called the frequency barrier when everything got shaken up. And Tiamat had exploded and become the asteroid belt and split off and created the earth and the heavens. The thing with the consciousness of the goddess is she became the totality of our creation, which is the breath of life. She animates all of life. And so the lower god didn't want anybody to know about her and put a veil there. Actually, she put the veil there to put the spark in everybody, but he made sure that we'd be ignorant of her. The veil was there to protect us for so long while we're in these incarnations, but his job in his mind was to not allow us to understand what she was all about. So the kind of consolation prize was to mention her, the Mary Magdalene, the mother figure, maybe the Virgin Mary, but nothing close to what she really represents, nothing close to the totality of what it represents. And this is not about gender, this is not empowering the physical feminine. This is the feminine in men and women. This is the feminine in the cosmos. This is the cosmic womb. This is the divine mother. This is the cauldron of creation. This is the underworld of Mother Earth that is going to regenerate and restore everything. So this is not just like, go women. It's like the feminine in creation, which is everything that we're all a part of. It's all about the balance of masculine and feminine. So when this shakeup happened, the frequency barrier was put in place. The frequency barrier almost became a technology. And what happened was the high races that used to live here, when they came and hit the frequency barrier, they became almost Neanderthal. So we think that we evolved from apes, but actually we were once higher and actually digressed into ape-like form. When the Anunnaki came, they did genetic manipulation to bring that ape-like creature back into Homo sapien. And that's when the reptilians that fled that were indigenous to the Earth and the Draco reptilians that attacked Lyra started to implement the agenda because they still wanted to preserve the original creation. But because they were so out of line with universal love and the reptilians were so warrior-like that the intervention took place and created an even bigger dilemma that we're in right now. And as much as it might have created more chaos, and everything that I mentioned is a little bit more than maybe the natural order of things, if things had been left alone, there is a huge reason behind it, and it is not an accident. It's just been a lot, maybe more to clear up than was expected. The thing is, the frequency barrier is why there's a lot of extraterrestrial monitoring of us, because once the frequency barrier starts to lift, the veils lift and we're more in connection with our universal family, and the ability to travel in the way that we used to is restored. One can relate it to like the goddess being traumatized, the earth being traumatized with this huge explosion, the things that happen with Tiamat, the dramas that happen with Marduk, the dramas that happen with this dysfunctional family that was the first family from the Creator. And so in this dysfunction, all these different things have taken place and all these wars have happened, but the trauma that it left the earth body in created the frequency barrier. It's kind of like when you've been in an accident or a huge breakup, it takes you years and years and years to get your center back, to remember who you are. The earth has been going through something similar. She's been thrown into three-dimensional frequency, and the 12 stargates, which connect to the 12-strand DNA, has been all shut down to number 3, which is so small compared to all that we are. So ever since then, it's kind of been like this trauma has made us all very vulnerable, particularly her. And so when we're dealing with things like HARP technology and all these different technologies and all these different, power structures, religions, and governments in the world, has really been taking advantage of the fact that she's been trying to get her center back, get her axis back. And so when people talk about the galactic alignments and Sophia getting back on her axis so that everything can be back where it's supposed to be, this is basically like the goddess recovering from incredible trauma and just a big shakeup. And as we're all extensions of her and we're connected to everything in the cosmos, obviously this is our story. This is not something external that I'm sharing. This is something that we've all taken on as beings. So the frequency barrier is what makes us, these humans, looking out, knowing that there's advanced civilizations with grand technologies and all these greater races, and we're just these humans. Well, what's the deal? Well, we used to be like them. We come from systems all over the universe. And just because we've taken a human form doesn't mean that we haven't been all that and that we're from that, and we know that. So this is the thing. When we take human form, we make an agreement to help this planet get back on track. And if we succeed or not succeed doesn't really matter, because whoever we truly are is who we'll always be. Even if we suffer a minor defeat, it's inevitable that everything is going to be where it's supposed to be at the end of the day. This is a process of restoration like anything else. And as we know, nature is a force with an intelligence, and the only thing it truly knows how to do is heal. And so the mind control technologies are so that we forget. As long as we don't know how to do something, they will step in and do it for us. And as long as we give them our money, our power, and attention, we continue to keep this frequency in that state of trauma because we're not empowered, we're not awake, and that's what they require. And this is why they're freaking out right now, because the frequency barrier is lifting, the goddess is coming back into power, back into the access, everything back in alignment. So what's the next thing? Chemtrails. What else? Oil spills, they're freaking out. I mean, they're just doing anything that they possibly can. And it's not going to stop the inevitable. It's just going to create reaction. And yes, we are going to do something. We will seek justice, but we will not fall into fear, because that's the game. As long as we're reacting, we lower our vibration. Every time we step up and we activate our 12-strand DNA, we disable their technologies, because their technologies do not vibrate on that level. There are 11-strand, 10-strand, lower fourth density technologies that actually crumble and deactivate in the face of God, Goddess consciousness. And I'll get into that later, because the looking glass technologies can't see past 2012, but the chronovisor technology can launch people into the future and into different timelines. And my colleague Andrew Bishago has experience with that, which I'll share. Excuse me. I know I talk fast. I try really, really hard to not, but it's just... So I say at the present time, the Draco-reptilians are the main threat to mankind on planet Earth. There is no real threat, but, you know, there is in the short term as far as the quality of our life. We are all sick of, you know, this sort of torment that hangs over our heads. So on a quality of life level, yes. But you can't defeat the Supreme Being. It's impossible. And actually, the larger picture and the true Creator is well aware of all this stuff happening. And so people say, you know, if God was really loving, why doesn't he intervene? And I say, well, God, Goddess has intervened through us waking up, because we are meant to be vessels for that energy on Earth. And so this is what I was saying before about the 12-strand and 11-strand. And the use of their technologies is so that they can stay on Earth. Earth is the, you know, the prize. It's the home base, as the goddess is the prize. Because they can't control her, they just do anything that they can to work around the fact that they can't. And a huge part of that is to get everybody functioning on a lower level so that she can't love and connect with her creation. And the beauty of the goddess energy is it's within all of us. It's not about recognizing it as one figure. It's about recognizing that we are the blueprint of the most divine. And we have gone through so much. And it wasn't really the plan, but there is a plan to restore it. And the beauty of the fact that there wasn't really a plan is the fact that something magical came into being, which was the anger that some of these lower entities had at the opportunity that we have to fully thrive has been not the plan, but underneath it all, when we truly devote ourselves to what we're capable of, that's when their plan shuts down. So I guess, you know, you don't really plan on being attacked, but you know that you have a choice when you are. And it doesn't matter about death, it doesn't matter about the physical as much as it matters that we're not controlled. Because we'll keep coming back, but the point is we just can't give ourselves away, because that's the only threat that really exists, is that we just give up and we just put our energy and attention on something else that isn't in our best interests. So Inanna is connected to the goddess, and she incarnates into the Anunnaki to make up for this agenda that wishes to control humanity. Enki is another ally of hers, and their whole thing is to really teach humanity about love. And even though there was higher extraterrestrials that used to be on Earth, and the frequency barrier was put into place, which created the Neanderthal man, they recognized that the human body could take souls from all sorts of places in the cosmos and incarnate. So that one human body or vessel, you know, could take the soul or incarnation of anyone or anything. So we have to realize that genetics aren't really that powerful, it's consciousness. It doesn't matter what human form we come in, and the point is, it's the consciousness that we carry. And so all these hybridization programs, all these New World Order agendas that connect to grid technology and the formation of the hybrid sort of chimera even races, and the whole attempt to control. Yes, bloodline is a factor, we know that. Yes, DNA is a factor, but it's the consciousness that reactivates the DNA. It's the waking up that restores everything. And so regardless of what our backgrounds are, regardless of what family lines we come from, we all have that potential. And so this genetic, you know, engineering and all that kind of stuff can throw the frequency off, but it's the consciousness that restores everything. So no matter how damaged a being is, we all know that anybody we visit at the hospital, anybody that we see is injured, when we connect with the spirit of that being, we connect with a very high frequency. It doesn't matter about the physical, but they are more concerned about preserving the physical, whereas conscious beings are more concerned about preserving enlightenment and the quality of life. And this is what the battle is right now. So Inanna goes into the underworld. She goes, and this is the journey that was very similar to mine, going and facing all the gatekeepers, going into hell, When the goddess energy was scattered, a portion of her went into the underworld, and that's the Kali energy, the Eshri Kagul, where she goes in, connects with the dark sister to restore the planet. This is what this energy has been doing. It's very cyclical, and this is the Venus transits. The Mayans talked about the Venus transits. This is what's been going on in the background this whole time throughout history. All these wars, the Anunnaki, and all these different things that have been going on are fine and great. Enki and Enlil in their battles, Cain and Abel, Osiris and Seth, all these brothers in their wars. But everybody seems to forget the mother. The mother doesn't want any of these wars. Here are these brothers vying for power with two different ways of doing it, yet where's the mother? And so this is what this energy does to compensate, goes through the cycle of death and rebirth in order to gain back her power and her ability to regenerate the planet and feed through the essence of the feet chakras and the chakra system, the essence of love and the unified field and unconditional love. So when we really connect to Earth, we're actually connecting with the unconditional love of the mother. Gaia is a multidimensional being that came directly from Source. It's the physical emanation of the feminine aspect of God. Not all planets are like this. And I could go on for days about some of this stuff. So I won't get too stuck on anything. But see, they tampered with the tree of life. And so as there were higher races that had to flee because of the frequency barrier and the whole drama of the asteroid belt and what happened to the planet there, the Olympian gods supposedly, are all connected to what happened at that split. So many different races did not have a place to go when their planets were destroyed or, these disruptions or wars happened. And so there were a lot of refugees that came to Earth. And reptilians that were indigenous hybridized with, the refugees from Lyra and Mars. For the Nordics and the Draco reptilians, merged together. And the Anunnaki is kind of a mix. And this is sort of what we're dealing with. But the manipulation of the tree of life and the introduction of Eden is like the new Homo sapien. And so this is not the beginning. Adam and Eve is not the beginning. They are a far later representation of the new model for humanity under the domain of an Anunnaki leader called the Demiurge. His agents are reptilian, but the Draco reptilians formed an alliance with some of them, but not all of them. And that's why the Anunnaki, Illuminati, but yet the Illuminati are against the Anunnaki, but some Anunnaki, we're talking like when we see ourselves, we're from all over different countries. Our parents are from here and our dads are from there. Our mothers are from here. And we're all a mix. So this is the same thing that's happened with the extraterrestrials. There's wars amongst them. There's battles amongst the Illuminati. There's battles in the intelligence communities. And this is the lessons of duality. We're in a realm where good and evil is the game. And so everything that we're seeing is that battle of good and evil. And that's the battle that we fight within ourselves when we make choices every day. Are we going to choose the light or are we going to choose the dark? It's not about these people that are external that we hear about or the people that I'm talking about or any of these races. It's about our choices. But this is the blueprint. These are the stories that we can relate to, that we can say, I'm just a micro version of this larger picture. And then we can start to arrange our energies and get into balance and wholeness and accept all these entities and beings as a part of who we are. And when we choose the right energies to run our beings, everything else that is of an inferior nature is put in its place. And this is what we have to do on Earth. We have inferior beings that are running the show, suppressing superior entities, and now the game is changing. And this is the alchemy. This has to do with the pentagram, the rituals that they've been doing. The pentagram is turning upright because of the Venus transits. So as the Illuminati and the global elite are using these symbols to create darkness and to control humanity, the Venus transits are drawing a perfect pentagram in the sky to turn it back upright again so that the dominant power on Earth is spirit. And when the dominant power is spirit, we're not ruled by survival. We're not ruled by money. We're not ruled by illness. We're not ruled by the physical world. Spirit is in charge, and it shifts matter. It changes things, and that's the nature of what miracles are. So Adam and Eve, that was the new prototype. And of course, Enki represented like the snake energy, which was giving us the choice of knowledge. If the tree of life was going to be the choice, yes, we would have lived a long time, but we'd still be under the domain of the Demiurge, which refuses to allow us to see what's beyond it, which is the true creator. This connects to the ET races and the reptilians and the government agendas that we're going to be discussing in just a little while. And this is the nature of what happened is the archetypes. So when we're dealing with the Anunnaki and we're dealing with all these beings and the so-called gods and goddesses, we're dealing with archetypes. But then, if anybody's done tarot, you'll know that we're made up of all these archetypes. So we are actually a combination and recipes of all these different forces. And so when you're dealing with government ET agendas, basically the Draco reptilians are the dominant force behind it. And so they use our government in order to keep us from truly connecting with all that we are, because then they don't have control. And this is what connects to the Roswell crash, World War II, and the formation of the CIA and all the three-letter organizations and everything like that, is all to stop all this stuff. So people always wonder, how can you bring the spiritual into the ufology? Well, the spiritual is who we are. You know, that's like saying, I mean, how can you separate love from your relationships? It's the essence, it's the quality of our experience on a soul level. There's a story of our soul, and then there's the story of all the different races and the different beings. But what is the true nature of all of it? Our creation is a love story. It's a screwed up love story, but it's still a love story. The zodiac was put in place to put us in an incarnation cycle so that we could be ruled by different forces and kind of assisted to fall on our face and get back up again, so that we could learn the lessons of duality, which is what the tree of good and evil is all about. So it's not some huge error that there's evil on the planet. It is actually giving us a chance to know the difference between losing ourselves to corruption or finding ourselves and being senior to it and taking a stand and changing the game. This is what we do when we heal. There's no difference that's going on in the outer world than what's going on in the inner world when we're dealing with our immune system, when we're dealing with illness or anything like that. So this has all been set in place, and this is where 2012 is right now, where the wheel of necessity is coming to an end. So when the Mayans talked about the end of the world or the end of time or this or that, yes, well, the frequency barrier is lifting, and this is why it's the end. But what is it the end of? It's actually the end of the zodiac, where we don't have to be so ruled by the planets. The planets are actually archonic. And they serve, though, the purpose of showing us the duality of each of their qualities. So take a planet like Neptune. It rules mysticism and spirituality in multi-dimensions, but it also rules escapism and addiction. Take, something like the sun. It's vibrant and creative, but it also rules arrogance. So there's always a light and a dark side. So these planets are teaching us to see the light and the dark until we find a way to merge them and create that beautiful, that bond again. And that's what the alchemical marriage is all about. And this is what the goddess teaches. And of course, she's been exiled because if we know this, then they don't have any control. Actually, I just want to say real quick, when I was at Free Your Mind conference in Philadelphia, it's always interesting to share a lot of this type of information, with a lot of people that are talking about ufology. But, somebody who was in the Church of Satan, who defected, who left, who had all the proof that he was in the church and accepted as being an agent to assist the Illuminati, said and explained their rituals and said that the Divine Feminine has been targeted, and she is the main thing that they are against, and they want us to have no connection with her whatsoever. So this is what's happening on the Earth. We can just say the Divine Feminine is Mother Earth, is Gaia. Because if we, put her as a figure too much, people will get lost in that whole mentality of, separation, and she is us. So the Church of Satan made, what he exposed was that they used, obviously, all her sacred symbology, the 7 pillars, the Jacob's ladder, and our whole ascension process, and they focus dark rituals all the time to stop this. And they use particular places on the planet, and they've built spikes and all sorts of things, underground systems to connect all these different electronic, the beast computers. And what this does is it allows us to, through vaccines and nanotechnology and chemtrails, keeps us sort of almost like we could become robotic, like very much controlled through these computers. And it's like, it's so laughable. It's like, nice try. First of all, have anybody had those weird things happen where your computer does weird things, or you just do something magical and you just know that you're more powerful than you think you are? And it's just, for frequency or a chip or anything of an electronic nature to control us is a laugh, because it's just, you can't control an awakened, enlightened, empowered individual. You just can't. And I don't tell these stories lightly just to be this positive influence or have a positive message. I survived a Mars recruitment, and these were the bad guys as far as I'm concerned. And I'm not here to bust on them. We have to thank the villain because they do help wake us up. But the psychotronic weaponry attack, the fact that there was an agent that was sent to take me to Mars under heavy-duty mind control was a clear indication that this was not an easy thing, and this was not, the dream relationship I wanted. So... And I was talking about, this is really where it's at. And I'm not going to get into it all, because I'm not really here to just, get into just the whole cosmology of everything. But the reason I want to bring up certain points is because it does relate to the treaties. It does relate to what's emerging on our planet right now. And it does relate to the hidden nature of what these agendas are all about. And it's all so very simple. When we realize what they're trying to stop us from doing, it's something that comes so naturally to us that actually just knowing that this is all we need to do is the ultimate permission in the world. To just let go and say, really? Sitting on the couch every day for a while and like not doing anything is all right? Yes, because you know what? Part of the beauty of waking up and finding one's freedom is getting comfortable with one's own natural rhythm. Not saying, oh, I have to be a slave, I have to do the 9 to 5, oh, I'm a loser or I'm lazy if I sit around for a day. It's just like we need that time, we need downtime, we need to go into the depths, we need to reclaim our power, we need as much energetic vacations as we can possibly take to really do the soul work. And they want to make sure that we're totally distracted from doing it. So I made sure I took all the time in the world that I needed to, because like I said, I went on that 20-year journey. So it really served me to take as much time off as I could, even if I was bedridden, because I was busy working, to complete this cycle. To the outer world, people were like, oh my God, but to me, I was doing really important things. I mean, it's true. And so don't ever judge yourselves because of what you need to do, because some authority voice in the back of your head says something judgmental. Just, this is where we deprogram, is when we start to tell the voices in our head or the voices of our parents or old authority or ancestors or government or religion, and we say, you know what, I got a better way, and it's my way. And it's all anchored in integrity. As long as we have integrity, we can't do any wrong. So the tree of knowledge is what we're dealing with. And this is, obviously, what I'm attempting to explain is the reptilian came first, the next was the mammalian. If you would believe it, in Atlantis there was a war between the reptilian and the mammalian energies. And so what's really profound is we're dealing with something that we're made of. It's kind of like taking our physical body and saying, my liver and my lungs are at war with each other, my heart and my mind are killing each other, my right and left brain, have sunk in a continent. I mean, it's like these are all energies that make us who we are. So throughout history, we've been given different elements and different aspects of who we are, from maybe malevolent races to benevolent to all these different scenarios. But what does it culminate in? It culminates in who we are today. We are the culmination of our whole history. In our cells, in our auras, and everything that we are in our chakra system, we hold the whole of creation. And all these different parts are at war, though. The right and left brain, they're not connected at all. Or at least they haven't been for a really long time. Science and spirituality don't go together. We're in a world of duality. And anybody that tries to pull it all together sounds like they're crazy, so. And yes, the Old Testament. This is just a quick example. And this almost, to me, explains everything that's wrong in the world. This is the lower relationship I was talking about. This is a myth. The myths are the story of the soul. We all carry the story within us. We all have a Persephone in us that is hiding in exile in the underworld, who is under the control of some kind of control energy. That could be our ego, it could be somebody in our life, it could be something that, we grew up in. But the point is, this is what the planet is under. Imagine that woman being the planetary body and the man holding her as the global elite, or the agendas of the Illuminati with the lower races, dragging her into the underworld. This is not the ideal relationship. No, it's not happy. So how do you get out of it? How do you get out of the underworld? Well, the labyrinth. You go through a maze to untangle all the control, all the lies, all the undermining, all the insecure, everything that has damaged the feminine and made her almost her own enemy, made her, almost think that every man must be that lower male, which is not true. And so we've all been so tampered with that we're at war with each other. We're at war with ourselves. We're at war with our relationships. And this is the whole idea, that we would be set up to annihilate ourselves. They're just pushing the buttons and pulling the strings. And it's us that have to snip them and decide how to protect ourselves from that button pushing, and to decide that we're going to honor our relationships as sacred, honor each other as part of our global family, and start to push and pull ourselves together, push and pull ourselves together, bring ourselves together, and unify, because once we do that, that's when all of this stuff gets activated, and this is what takes them down. And this I know because we all know deep down. But I do have information that was leaked to me during this Mars recruitment, and I will get into this looks like a better relationship. I just want to throw that out there compared to the other one. This is a little happier. So you put, she's like, thank you, and he's just, he understands, so it's much. And this is funny because Venus and Mars. So when we're dealing with, I'm dealing with a story like a Mars recruitment, which is, really weird, because I go to family gatherings, and I really want, to talk about this stuff, because I'm figuring, this would be the family to talk about it with. And I'm not busting on them at all for not really being able to talk to me about it. they might be sworn to secrecy, but what's funny is when I ask them, come on, let's really talk about what Ike was doing. Didn't he go to a dentist? I mean, didn't he visit with extraterrestrials? And they tell me, no, that he visited with the dentist. And so I don't stop there. And this is the beauty of what we can all do. When I was told to go to Mars, when I was told that I was protected and I would have this great role on Mars, or when I was told by my family that Eisenhower met with a dentist instead of extraterrestrials, I don't care if all these people were trained to say it or they thought that all of it was true. There's something within us that knows truth from fiction. And so I followed my gut. And I just said, nope, I don't think so, nope, I don't think so. Hey, if I'm wrong, great. I don't mind falling on my face. But these were the things that I was going to stand for. And like I said, from the beginning of my life, this was a life or death battle. These were not just like, oh, I don't think I'm going to go to Mars. It was like, it was so not easy to get away from. So it's interesting to see, this connection. And what's funny with all the other relationships I showed you, when she's dealing with Mars, he's just like, just asleep, like doesn't want to deal with her. But what's funny is the Mars agenda and the myths of Venus are all very connected to what has been playing out on the global stage as far as the hidden Mars colony and the agenda to go to Mars. So when the myth of Venus and Mars comes together, Venus is here to tame Mars, to enlighten Mars. Mars being the third chakra, like I said, they want to keep us in third chakra and below rulership so that we're not expanding. The Mars solar plexus energy can only be enlightened by the goddess energy of Venus to raise that consciousness and pull that Mars energy into divine will. The third chakra in Mars is all about the warrior, all about will, all about, getting one's way, power, dominance. But when that Mars energy is enlightened by the heart and opens and expands, it becomes divine will, and Mars reaches a much higher level. And that's what this is happening. And so call me crazy, but when people come and try and get me to Mars, and I'm already connecting to the Venus energy, and I grew up getting schooled about the Magdalene energy and Sophia just for my own intuition, I'm thinking this is kind of interesting because, this might be a chance to work some of this energy, not just on a chakra level, but really like on the world chakra stage, because I'm not going to go to Mars, and that was a right-away thing. And instead of getting super angry, I felt that the best thing to do was to recognize how this connects to all of us and what we're all doing. To stop an agenda in the external has to happen within. Where do we keep our Mars energy in dominance and control? Where do we try and control others? Where are we needing to take that energy and expand it into the love and into the heart? And this is what the Venus transits are doing. And this is what the goddess role is. And so all of our different experiences have to do with being controlled and how to move those forces of control away. And, there's the whole, the Venus, kill them with kindness, or just let love radiate, positive thoughts and all that. But, sometimes that's not enough. And there's some serious work that needs to be done. And when I incarnated into the Eisenhower family, I knew that this was the work I came to do, which was connected to the military-industrial complex and to our ancient history and to mythology and to all things esoterical. So this is kind of like the attempt on our planet to kind of make it like this techno-planet, like technologically based. And just an interesting picture. Mind control in and of itself, has been in the works for so long. And this, like I said, because the feminine energy can't be controlled, she is lied to and deceived. And this is really what happened. I'm going to give you a brief background, but I'm going to put a more pleasant picture because like that one. This is what we want. We want the mother to take care of us. We don't want this. So I'm going to just tell you about my recruitment to Mars. In 2006, I went to a festival. I had already had such a hell path that I pretty much, was thinking that I might be just about done because I was living in California and I said, I cannot take the controls on my life anymore. I can't stand being out of my body anymore because I wasn't grounded. Like I said, I left for about 20 years, walking the labyrinth maze to try and get out of the underworld or wherever I was thrown. I could only associate with myths. I read the myths later and I got goosebumps. I'm like, this sounds exactly like what I've been dealing with. So after I energetically dealt with a lot of those forces, then I finally said in my life, show me the ones in the physical world that are doing this so that I can get free of them. Because I was literally, so suffocatingly not okay. Like every day was hard to survive. I wrote a book about it. It's called The Grail of Venus. And the little side note was Chronicles from Hell and the Quest to Unite Heaven and Earth. So this was the book I wrote, and it was my process of how to get out of this hell and out of this control. And I hadn't even met the Mars recruiters yet. So, this whole journey was much more energetic than anything else, and I was just, writing about all these things, and I'm an astrologer, so I could connect it to things going on the planet. But There's something like missing. I just could not get a grip on anything. I couldn't create anything. There was something always controlling me, or some evil force following me everywhere. Even on perfectly sunny days, cyclones of energy would come down the street and break windows, and I was like, something really weird is happening. I even checked into the hospital and I said, I just want to see normal people who love and care about others. I mean, it was just wacko, and I'm like, I must be crazy. So I was going to go get myself some help. And when I got myself help, all they did was validate that I wasn't crazy. And I'm like, I really wanted to just be crazy because it would have been easier to go play Parcheesi at an institution. So I ended up at a clairvoyant institution instead, which meant that I would have my eyes closed for about 2 years and really work this energy and find out from other clairvoyants and other healers what the heck was really going on. I never heard anything but validation about everything that I'm telling you right now. So it was very interesting because I was hoping to get, the reassurance that, you're just a little bit out of balance, maybe taking this would help, or, you're suffering from this condition. None of that. And so after being at the Institute for 2 years and learning how to read and getting a lot of readings done and hearing things that I can't utter in public because people would think I'm nuts, and I'm not trying to portray anything, because I'm just a vessel for energy like we all are, and I've just chosen to devote myself to this energy. And but so much so that it has fully taken root in my life mission. It's not something I'm channeling or something that I'm appreciating. It really took a hold of me and became something larger than I could really manage at times. So to get into the treaties and stuff like that, I'll do in a second. You can read that kind of while I'm finishing my story, if you can do those two things at once. So when I finally just said, I can't do this anymore, I'd been at the Clairvoyant Institute, they validated everything, and I said, well, I must have really bad karma or something, because some serious dark forces are following me everywhere. And they weren't like reptilians or entities that I was seeing. I don't remember being on any tables or being abducted like that. Maybe that happened, I don't know. I don't have any remembrance of that, except for the visitations I had as a kid. But I mean, I had it, and the Clairvoyant Institute really validated the fact that, I was sane, and I could basically feel good about my thoughts and what I was saying. And so when I declared, because my life was falling apart constantly, and I would go there and ask them, and they said, you have to be senior to these forces. This is not bad karma. As much light as you have as much dark trying to stop you, and they know what you're here to do. And that didn't make a whole lot of sense, but I said, I can't take it anymore. It was just too much to keep my house together. Everything was falling apart. I had done my last class, and I just said, whatever you are, control force, just take me to you. I need to find who you are. So I just let go. I just went anywhere the forces would take me. And I ended up on a plane flying back home to my mom. That's where the forces take you when you have lost your way. So I wouldn't say that's how magical I'm on the couch of my mother's house. But anyway, it all led to phone calls here and there and a lot of synchronicities that lined up. And I met somebody who had documentation from Eve, supposedly, who did an interview. And she has kept an orb inside of her for thousands of years and has been able to keep herself alive. Now, this is so far out there that I'm not even going to go into this story. Eventually, I'm going to do a talk all about this, all on my own, with the documentation up here so that people can see what she said. The person who gave me this interview is a hermit, has never shared it with anybody, and held it for 20 years, and I'm the first person he actually handed it to and said, this belongs to you. And it's Eve basically explaining everything about the Sophia energy and what happened, and all about Adam, all about the orb, the Philosopher's Stone, and what the ingredients are, and how this ball is, if in the right person's hand, can keep you alive. If it's in the wrong person's hand, it can kill you. Well, the alchemists knew about the Philosopher's Stone and worked with ingredients that were similar, and that's where we hear about ormus and white powder gold. But this is the true Philosopher's Stone, and Eve knew about it, and anyway, so the ingredients and everything, unbelievable information in this interview. And there's also a lot of information that ties me into it, which maybe someday, if stuff really hits the fan, I'll share, because then I'll feel a little bit more comfortable maybe. But right now, it's not important. But that was the first level of what was controlling me, because what I found out, he said, well, 20 years ago, I cast a spell that whoever this belonged to would come to me. And so when he met me and gave it to me, he assumed that I was this person. And because I was so knowledgeable about all the information, because it was so tied into my path, I already connected to all the information. And he mentioned the labyrinth. He mentioned, myths that I was already just, writing a lot about. And hair color, eye color, height, person, everything. I literally had the goosebumps, and he just said, here, just take it, it's yours. But I said, well, what about the spell? Because somehow I've been led from California all the way back to the East Coast to get this from you because obviously this has had some control over me. And so we made, an attempt to undo this spell because it got out of control. He said that he had been looking for 3 years for this person that she mentioned, didn't know it would take 20 years, and he lost his mind. So he did this really powerful ritual to bring this energy to him, and that was at the age that I felt the dark forces on me, controlling me. So I'm like thinking, yes, I finally, and I got the interview, and I got this information, and I'm like, okay, we've completed our karma, and the spell is broken. Now I can have my life back. So I'm running off just like, woohoo. Now I can create whatever I came here to create, on a more love-based level, to share just the love and because really what they've been trying to do is stop the flow of energy between us in every way that they can. So I'm thinking that I'm done, but lo and behold, I go to a festival and I meet somebody, and I meet him just like a normal sort of encounter, and end up hanging out with this person, and told me that he was going to be going to DC, which is where I was staying on my mother's couch for a little while. And so we started kind of seeing each other, and during that time he had we just got to know each other. There was no weird manipulations or anything. It was just a very organic, genuine encounter. So we had gotten together, and he was on his way to go to a secret meeting in DC, but I didn't really think much of it. But we started to form a relationship, and I was asking questions about the secret meeting. I'm like, because it had to do with psychic spies and remote viewing, and he kept talking about Mars and this and that. And he said, I can't tell you too much because you can't say anything. And I'm the kind of person that will not ever share a secret if I'm not supposed to. But this one was a little bit different, and that's why I'm sharing it. So anyway, so he's coming to DC to go to these meetings, and I'm really not told too much, and I haven't really done my research. I knew about mind control, I knew about, global elite stuff, and the Illuminati, the dollar, and I had seen, a lot of stuff, and I was privy to it, but didn't quite grasp the Mars thing and where it connected to all of it. So I didn't quite put two and two together. I'm just thinking there's no way I'm going to go to Mars. But I'm thinking that this invitation probably has to do with something years from now. It's some project he's involved in that has to do with, maybe the whole of humanity recognizing that we are going to travel. And this is, connected to just normal space travel stuff. I wasn't that naive, but I didn't have the total red flags because the little red flag that came up got pretty much squashed right away, kind of, don't worry about it, it's not a big deal, and it became a big deal after I got engaged, and I moved in with him, and he was, I was in a relationship with him, and then all of a sudden, it came back up, and it came back up in a major way. At first it came up because I was really trying to get answers, like, where are you going, and what's going on? I wasn't really supposed to know too much, but then when I was locked into the relationship and I had moved and I was now implanted in this relationship, that's when it was really laid on to me that, oh no, we're going to Mars. This isn't like an if, we are going, and the target date is 2012. And so I was getting, emails and all this sort of stuff that brought up Project Looking Glass and how Project Looking Glass was not able to see anything past 2012, and it brought up, things about having to evacuate the planet and go to Mars. And so I saved all these emails because you just don't delete emails like that. And still, it sounds friendly. And I'm thinking, well, I just put my website together and I have all this work that I'm doing for Gaia that I was, really prepared to remember from when I was a child because I had already started putting it out there. And I'm like, I bet they'll be really interested in this because I thought we could all be, friends and maybe work on things on the Earth and go to Mars later, but we'd all be able to talk about this. I had no idea that I was dealing with massive mind control, you will not talk, and there was no discussion. And so I was getting pretty freaked out a little bit and had this dream. And this was before I really knew the heaviness of what I was dealing with, but I had this dream that I was being taken up, I was in the ocean, and I remember feeling the water and everything, and I was being taken up in this ship by chains. And I was in the ship, and it was heading to Mars. And everybody in the ship was dressed in black, and they had, some sort of headpiece on, and they were just monitoring everything. And this voice from the sky said to me, you have a choice. You can either stay in this ship and go with them, they'll control you, they won't harm you, but they'll control you, or you can stay and you can do your mission. And so I'm thinking, okay, well, of course I'm going to stay and do my mission. So before I could do anything, I fell out of the ship, and I plunged back into the water, and I realized my partner was still up in the ship. So I tried to get back up to the ship, but lightning and thunder was crashing, and there was a storm, and there was no way I was going to find it. And I plunged back down into the water, and I said, I'm all alone, though. I didn't expect I'd be all alone. And then I looked around, and the sky filled with this organic light, and all the planets started to align. They said, you made your choice. And I sat on the shore, and everything was like, you made the right choice. So I wake up in the morning, I'm like, hey, you should hear my dream. I had this really weird dream. And I was taken up in chains. I'm like, you were on the ship, and I had this choice. And he was just like, you shouldn't have told me this. From that point on, everything changed. I started to be leaked information. And the only way I was given information was if the cell phones were taken apart, so the battery was off, the TVs were unplugged, everything in the house was unplugged, the computers were unplugged, and he even went so far to put the unbatteried cell phone on one side of the room and his on the other end, just to be safe. And so he'd just tell me, this is very serious. And he said, everything that you write about, he's like, they know this about you. He said, that's why you've been recruited to go to Mars. And he started to tell me more stuff. And the thing is, the reason he unplugged everything is because he said that they're listening to us. They listen to everything that we're doing. And he also said that we had webcams in our neighborhood. And I'm just thinking, this is great. I have 2 kids. I got engaged, and it's a little bit over my head. And this is just really getting bad, because the more I knew, the more everything started to reveal itself to me as it's almost like you're deactivating a computer. You found something that you weren't supposed to find, and it's just kind of like looking behind the curtain in The Wizard of Oz. It's like you see all the different things that are putting out this facade. We see this with 9/11. We see this with all these world wars. We see this happen in our world, and this was another false flag. And it was to get me to go to Mars, and it was all priming me to make me feel special, and that I was going to be protected, and I was going to help reseed a new civilization. And so some people are like, well, why didn't you go? Even when I tell them the mind control part of it, they're like, why didn't you go to Mars? And, it's like, sorry if I made some kind of mistake and people think I should have gone, but no. First of all, in the Eisenhower administration, the treaties had to do with this Mars agenda. And Alternative 3 is why this visitation was happening. It all started when, of course, with the Nazi Party, and when the American, the U.S. Army, I guess you could say, and the Allies were basically thinking that they were winning the war. There was actually an agreement already formulating. And that happened between Roosevelt and the Extraterrestrials. This was the first treaty, an agreement. And of course, the inverted pentagram has everything to do with keeping the Venus energy suppressed, to keep everything to where the power of matter is supreme and the goddess is exiled, because when we connect with her inside of ourselves, we nurture, we heal, we unify. And this is not saying that the masculine role, the divine masculine, in unison with that is what it's all about. So this isn't, like I said, about gender. It's about the gender, it's about it working together. So in Roosevelt's administration, this is when actually the treaties first happened. People think it first happened with Eisenhower. It actually first happened with Roosevelt. And this is when this agreement was signed. And why did an agreement need to be signed? Because basically, the Draco-reptilians felt that they were losing control. And every time they feel that they're losing control, they need to step in and make some kind of agreement. And because Hitler and the Nazi Party was already comfortable with these kind of agreements, they had the extraterrestrial technology, the CIA moved the agreements into the American government based on Project Paperclip. Even though this was already in the Truman administration, it's based on the treaty that was signed with Roosevelt. So when you're dealing with the end of the Second World War and Truman's administration, basically, right as Eisenhower is being pulled into becoming president, the American government is being infiltrated by Nazi scientists. And the underground bases and all the work that the extraterrestrials have been doing for 40 years previous were going to start to come up. Because when the Roswell crash happened, the Roswell ship was heading to Dulce, which is where the underground base was. So Eisenhower was kind of caught in the middle of it. Here he is trying to win the war, trying to stop these entities, and the next thing you know, he's becoming president, and he's asked to talk with them. Because we're not really dealing with real wars, we're dealing with off-planet wars that are taking in the form of the human domain, and they're to obviously divide us. So he comes over to the American government, and then here are the treaties that are being presented to him. But at this time, the government had already been taken over, and this group called Ultra saw to it that he would sign the treaty, because basically after the Second World War, when they started to utilize the technologies, they were breaking free of that sort of control or answering to their overlords. And so after the Roswell crash happened, there was this concern that, this UFO information would be leaked out, so they had to make an agreement, which was to keep the UFO stuff in secrecy. So if there was going to be a UFO crash that everybody would find out about, they better, create these hidden organizations to make it look ridiculous and to make anybody who's been abducted seem like they're crazy. And this is what we've been dealing with up until about 10 years ago, or at least 5 years ago, 10 years ago. I don't even know what year. I know it's 2012. So yeah, the Roswell crash was sort of like that, this is supposed to be stuff that's covered up. So that's when Eisenhower, that happened in 47, and this was kind of the beginning of the three-letter organizations, MJ-12, and Truman had established these secret organizations to deal with the UFO dilemma. And so when you're dealing with the UFO dilemma from the side of the agents, the ones that want to utilize this technology, then you got the military and the Pentagon, which is basically what took over the presidency. But when you're dealing with, Ike at the time, or anybody else who cared about the well-being of our humanity, this is when the warning of the military-industrial complex comes out. Because here, winning the Second World War didn't get one. Basically, we have Nazi America, and we're winning the war. And I've just taken it upon myself to complete this work, because the war wasn't really won, to fight the invisible war, the one that nobody sees. Because if we wait around to see who actually wins and who the governments think are the true victory, then we're not seeing the lies that are being held from us, and we're just kind of waiting for good news, and we're wanting to be protected when there's bad news. And so the war on terror is to help us look up to the leaders, to continue this sort of game that we all know at this point. So Truman kind of passed the baton on to Eisenhower, and very difficult because, it's like, talk about weird, because I thought a lot of people in the government, or, weren't expanded enough to even think about, these type of things, let alone be well-versed in the occult. So I was always wondering, why am I studying the occult? Why is it so important that I understand astrology and understand the tarot in such a deep and profound way, and taking it to such another level? And I realized, in a way, that it's an important language to know on a lot of levels, but it's also to counteract the fact that the Freemasons and the Knights Templar and all these different groups that were protecting a lot of ancient wisdom were infiltrated, because these sort of secrets and knowledge gave one the ability to connect to a lot of power. And actually, when Enki was helping humanity discover these secrets and this knowledge, that's when humanity was under the threat of being annihilated, because the last thing they wanted was their so-called slaves to actually not need to be in that slave mentality, looking up and worshiping the elder gods of the Anunnaki. So when Enki did that, it started the ball rolling of the Illuminati starting to build and create heavy agendas, and that's when the power structures and the religions got infiltrated, so that we would never be empowered. We would always be less than that. And so Eisenhower, really hit a crucial time in history, and I'm sure he wished he could have played his cards better. And so, we think about, the races he must have met with. Supposedly the first encounter he had was with the Nordics. And so people say, he should have made the agreement with the Nordics, because the Nordics were going to do this and they were going to do that. But the Nordics also had been taken over, in a sense, by the Draco reptilians, and there was an alliance and an agreement that had been built. And because of the wars going on with them, he was afraid of trusting either side and wanted to kind of hold off. But when the second one came around, the Atoms for Peace thing and the detonation of the nuclear device had taken place, which sort of made the decision for them without having it all done in the correct way. So when the Greys had the meeting the second time around, there was a lot of vulnerability going on. And so, actually that should have gone first. And this is what connects to the Dulce Wars. There was such suspicion about what these treaties were about, and because they knew that the Roswell ship was going to go to Dulce, they invaded or asked that whoever was in that underground base be evacuated. And that's where the Dulce Wars were, and lots of lives were lost. And so the greatest tragedy of all this is that these treaties led to agreements and exchanges of technology. And what happened was the military took complete and total advantage of the technologies that they were given, and that's where we hear about MILABs, military abductions, and super soldier programs, and how the Draco reptilian agenda has really moved into territory that is absolutely mind-blowing as far as what it's attempting to do. And the thing is, there's so many different different factions of all this kind of warring for each other, that the only way to really redeem this and the only way to make any sense out of it or to even heal it or confront it or deal with it is to locate the energy that they have thrown out of the picture, that they have misrepresented, that they have rewritten into a different way so that we would be forever confused and not in connection to it. And that's, of course, the story of the feminine energy. And so that's where HARP technologies and the control, weather modification, and mind control, and all this type of stuff comes in. A mass agenda to chip everybody so that they can be controlled through these beast computers is what's underway. And so what was interesting was when I was dealing with the ex that was trying to get me to go to Mars, he was talking about what the patrons were telling him. He was having encounters with extraterrestrials that were telling him about this agenda to Mars. So he never was saying, oh, the people that I'm talking to in this meeting are telling me about Mars. He just said that they're helping me get us to Mars. And he was working with scientists. He was working with this group of people. Some of them actually have spoken at MUFON that were a part of this Mars recruitment. I'm a little afraid to say their names because it might just put a lot of waves in there and then they might hear, and I just don't need the drama. But so yeah, a lot of them actually are very public and have cover names and occupations to protect them. So and what's funny is this isn't just research. I mean, this is experience. I mean, I didn't know a lot of this stuff when I was dealing with it. So, you know, there's one thing to research and look on the internet and be completely confused. It's another thing to be living with somebody who's actually, you know, somebody that has dealt with that and is completely under their control. And the way that I noticed was, you know, he'd be, you know, normal and just like not under any influence at all, but just, you know, a person that you could tell was functioning from their genuine nature. But he would get phone calls, and there were codes that were given to him on the phone where he would just drop everything and disappear for days and have no idea where he went or what he was doing. And that's when I really started to research and pay attention to the names that he was talking about with the group. Actually, I started this after the dream, but also after the strange behavior. This is just when I had my attention really on, okay, what is this Mars recruitment, and who are you talking to? And these certain names kept coming up. And I'll just say one of the names that came up. Dr. Hal Puthoff, who works at the Research Institute in Austin, who's a physicist, very known for his work with zero-point energy. He was the main handler of my ex. And the only reason I'm saying his name is because I'm not going to blame him or say that he built the Mars colony, but it's already out there and on public record that he was definitely one of the main characters. And so that's already, that's a done deal. And John Alexander. Okay, here it goes. Whoops. So anyway, I didn't know these people. I'm just writing down their names. And what's funny is, you know, 4 or 5 years later, you know, these are people in the field that are going on coast to coast, and it's just like, whoa, okay. So yeah, John Alexander, I mean, it's this whole group of people, Ron Pandolfi, they all work for the CIA, and they're all advisors in a sense. But what they do is they pull in people that have had abductions, and they kind of act like a John Mack would, and they, you know, give them counseling, and they find out what has been going on, and they act like they're very supportive, and they're into helping. So I'm sitting here like, oh, you're talking to patrons, or, you know, these ETs about going to Mars, and here's these group of people. So I took the names of the people, and I'm listening to what he's saying about this, and I remember the times and what would happen before he would go out and start to have these communications. When things got really strange and difficult, and he would exit and not come back for a while, he would come back with all these communications. He would call them transmissions that he got. But his aura and the energies that he was emanating would make me and my children and dogs sick. So after he would have these encounters, we'd be left like, blah, like really not well for a while. Sorry for the graphic. But it didn't feel right. I'm like, gosh, you know, if you're really having encounters with, I mean, I guess, you know, one could get sick just with the frequency of like a high race, but something didn't feel right. And I'm like, you know, these aren't real communications. I swear to God, I swear he's getting, you know, information sent from humans. Like, they're using some kind of technology and they're sending him this information. This is not coming from an extraterrestrial race. And I just knew this instinctually. I didn't know about my labs. I mean, vaguely had heard about it. I mean, you know, but it's like I hadn't really researched it, but I just knew it. I trusted it in my gut. And so that ship that was going off to Mars, to me, was a whole group that had utilized the ET technology and had decided to kind of play God with it. So I'm not here to say, you know, this race is bad or that race is bad, but there has definitely been an exchange of technology. There are definitely lower races, and they have made agreements with beings that aren't mature enough to handle it. And so the mistake that Eisenhower made is he didn't realize that those in the military would do this with that technology. He was feeling vulnerable, and he thought the technology could serve as some sort of protection. So in further research and investigation and just monitoring of its behavior, I started to try and get things that maybe could help him. I ordered rare earth magnets in Oregon. I was doing all this research, and I was trying to, deactivate whatever chips he might have, which didn't go over too well. So I couldn't really do anything. And, was really kind of lost in the struggle of, okay, first of all, I don't want to go to Mars. I got to protect me and my children. But then, of course, I wanted to rescue him, and that was going to be something that I just couldn't do. So the best thing that I could do was to speak about what I was discovering, so that they knew that I knew even more of what they were all about. So as I was doing the research and using these names, I wasn't finding out a lot. Like I said, they all have cover jobs. So when you Google their name, you'll see, physicists at Austin and this and that. And I was just like, but there's got to be something, there's got to be something. And I researched for 2 weeks straight. And I went to one website that linked me to another, that linked me to another, that linked me to this little story. And I think it was the name Paul Benowitz or somebody like that. And it connected to somebody else that connected to this name. And then it said that all these names that I had written down were connected to HARP technologies, ELF technologies, artificial telepathy, and that's the thing about the artificial telepathy, in my labs, and psychotronic weaponry, and all this stuff. And I said, whoa, this sounds exactly like what I'm dealing with. So I was all excited. I'm like, okay, now what? Because I got all this crazy weaponry, now what do I do? Because I knew that I had already been put through the gamut with it, and because they got really frustrated because they couldn't really control me through it. And this is what they leaked to me. They said, well, because the technologies don't work on you, we thought we could control you through your heart. So basically what it's called, there's a term for it, it's called the honey trap. They'll take an agent and they'll set you up with them, and then they'll create a love relationship, and then they pull you into it based on the manipulation of the heart. And they knew that I'd probably be easy to manipulate on a heart level. And so on that, so once they told me that, it just really dawned on me that that the greatest weakness in me needed to be the strongest part of me, and that I was not going to let that be a factor anymore. So it was also leaked to me that they had a list of men, and that this wasn't the first attempt, that actually 4 or 5 people that I had met were under their control. What's interesting is I have a lot of friends that have broken free of the programs, the assassin programs, the mind control programs, the monarch programs, but then I realized that the partner I was with was a trained person, just like they were, to do something, that I was the mission. And so 9 months into the relationship, he said, I have one thing to confess to you. Remember how I met you at the festival? He said, I was sent to find you, that this was all pre-planned. And then I'm like, well, how could we connect so much? Because I'm not just going to fall for some agent that they throw my way. I'm not whatever. And then he was talking about, or actually somebody who had defected helped clarify it because he couldn't, and said that the looking glass technologies go into the past and the future, and they were able to locate us in a past life, and that we had, an affinity that would make it easy for us to form a relationship, and that what they do with the looking glass technologies and the time travel technology is they can target things and get to know what its function is, and then target it before it's able to fulfill its mission. So what they did was they grabbed him and pulled him into their circle, so that instead of me meeting him in the normal way, I would meet him but under their control. So something that naturally would happen is happening, but he's already in the web, and they want to draw me into the web, and that was the only way that they thought they could do it. And so it was great because, like I said, they can't control the feminine energy. They can only deceive it. They can only fool us. So this was a great example of being fooled. And so I thought, well, there's no way I can really break free of this unless I start talking about it, because talking is my protection. So I got on the phone with my friend, and I was telling her everything that I was finding out about them, and I heard the phone going click, click, click all the time. I'm like, yeah, can you hear me? And the thing is, because you get so pissed off that the word fear doesn't even equate. Like, I have not had any fear about any of them. I fear, little things, like, why have my kids... No, that's not little at all. But, just little things that are just daily, everyday concerns. But for some reason, these folks did not cause me any fear at all. If anything, I was so glad that I finally could confront them and just let this secret and facade and this lie go and get my life back. Because that's all they are. It's all scare tactics. It's all fear-based. It's all technologies that are working with frequency to distort our perceptions, to distort our emotions. And if we just can understand that, we can get a grip on it. Just like when we're dealing with some negative force, or we're camping in nature and we have mosquitoes to contend with, or poisonous snakes. You work around it. It's not a problem. So there's no difference with these entities. We can't fear them. We can just simply work around it. And I like to just relate it to the physical body. Our physical body is made up of all sorts of forces and systems, the mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual. We've got all different organs and systems in our bodies, and we've got an immune system. And the beauty of the Venus transits, it connects us back to the immune system. The Venus transits are all about the expansion of the heart and the restoration, which is boosting the global immunity of us and raising the spirit level to such a high level that all these other forces will not be able to thrive. So the reason I share this is because this is how I broke free. So it's not just some hopeful message. I lived it. The more I empowered myself, the more I exposed the truth, the more I put myself into it, as uncomfortable as it was, the more I recognized the lies, the more I remembered who I was, and the more I could just find, a way out. And it really just was a path of empowerment and of just remembrance. And the more stronger I got, the more weaker to me they got, to the point where they even said, I think it's time that we put the wheels on, the name of their group, and we followed you instead. Because I'm like, well, that's really ironic, because when you think of all the stuff that connects to, it's nice that they would say that, but you know what, I'm like, I'm not buying it for a second. I'm like, you guys are master deceivers. You think that we're really going to be friends? I said, but I certainly send, love and forgiveness, and I appreciate the role you have to play. But it got to the point where they were wanting to do videos with me to prove to the public that we are all buddy-buddy. Because what they tried to do was say, but Laura, we did this so that you could do your real work in the world. And this was all to really help you. And on some level, yeah, it has. But I'm not going to, do videos with them and act like they're my pals because of what they did to my ex and what they're doing to humanity and what they're doing with these technologies and how much they don't have any problem or moral remorse about this level of insult and injury. So there was no way I was going to join in with any of it. So what happened was I ended up exposing the story, and Alfred Weber shared it, and I had no idea that it would really lead to me being able to talk about it. And the thing is, when these exchanges happened and the military got their hands on it, the last encounter that Eisenhower had, brought up the Venus energy, which is interesting because here, in a sense, starting with Roosevelt, humanity has kind of been signed over to be just experimented upon, to be, all these things, even though the agreement was to only do it to a few and to give all the names and to make sure that it was done in the best way possible, that treaty was broken. And so, supposedly, the Venetians, Valiant Thor showed up in the 1960s, and met with Eisenhower and supposedly Nixon. Well, it's funny because Julie Nixon's my aunt who married David Nixon, who's my uncle. So, the Nixon-Eisenhower thing, how the heck could I grow up in this family and never hear about extraterrestrials? And here I am on stage sharing things that have everything to do with the Eisenhower-Nixon administration, Venus, and all this stuff, and Mars, and all the, and not once ever in my family have we talked about ETs, Mars, or any of this. Their family is in my life, so I just don't know why. But I think what it does, it protects them from being responsible for what I know. It's kind of like, well, maybe she'll find out on her own, maybe she won't. There's a silent appreciation of me in this family, though I think I'm doing something that they just don't feel that they can get away with. And it just so happens that my generation, or the position that I've been put in, so far so good, I've been able to somewhat get away with. But, what's interesting is, I'm like, yeah, I don't ever think they really wanted to hurt me. Then I'm like, well, wait a second. That book that I wrote, it was impossible to survive every day. The amount of strange experiences of trying to stay alive were absolutely unbelievable. So the book will be out at some point. This just shows the energy of Sophia in the background, doing the alchemy with the Venus transits, changing the whole game from behind the scenes. There's a lot happening behind the scenes. And so when people want to identify the Venus transits in themselves, the Venus energy, the divine feminine, and you can't really identify it, just remember that might be the part that's exiled and like Persephone in the underworld. But there's, a ton of aspects. And so the whole process is to go into the underworld, to face all the gatekeepers, to get one's seniority back from the power of that control, and to rise again. And in doing this, it shatters these technologies, and it changes the game. And this is what the extraterrestrials were preparing me for. Do not lose this information. It will be ripped away from you. And because by the time, the Mars recruitments rolled around, if I wasn't prepared, I might just, I wouldn't have gone along with it. Because, Mars, compared to planet Earth, the biggest key to prepare for our future is I would recommend that people do not get on any ships and leave planet Earth. I just have gotten a lot of insights about how much they do not want to intervene with our connection to the Mother, because this isn't just Mother Earth. This is much more than Mother Earth. This is like the goddess, like Ein Sof, like beyond Kath. This is an incredibly holy, beautiful, divine planet, and she wants us. This is why immediately when they said we need to go to Mars, I said, you really think we need to evacuate Mother Earth? I mean, sure, Mother Earth needs to shake some of us off and this and that, but when we really choose to co-create with her and devote ourselves to her, you know, we're in it for the long haul, and we do not need to ever separate from her. She needs us. We're in relationship to her. We are the ones that are creating the shift. But if we need any inspiration or any knowledge or wisdom to know how to do it, it comes from her to us. This is what we inherit. She's our mother. And she has the whole path unfolding. It's all in the cosmic intelligence. It's happening in the cosmos. There's nothing that's getting in the way except for these agendas that want us to believe that it's not happening. How am I for time? Okay, so this is the Venus energy, the Venus transits that's been working behind the scenes. And even Margaret Starbird, who wrote a book about Mary Magdalene, brought up the significance of the towers in relationship to the divine feminine and how much it all connects. Here's another fear factor to get us all just, you know, focused into just the panic. And it's similar to when the frequency barrier was put into place. What they want to do is keep the frequency barrier alive, to keep the vibration in scattered, low frequency, low consciousness, fear-based. And as long as you still create these kind of disruptions, it keeps us in that vibration. And so this was a massive attempt to keep us from ascending, to keep us from going to where we naturally go. It's kind of like when we cut ourselves, nature and our bodies naturally know how to heal. We don't have to say, please heal my wound. When we get pregnant, we don't need to say, baby, grow, baby, grow. Our job is to just maintain, to take care of us, to take care of ourselves. Like a seed, we plant a seed, we water the plant, we make sure it gets enough sunlight, but we don't have to tell it how to grow. We don't have to tell it what to do. It knows. Same with our Mother Earth. It knows exactly how to make sure we get to where we need to be. But all these different things that hate the fact that she knows and that she's the supreme being with the Father is what they can't stand because they're in competition to it. Yes, they could transform and become one with it, but that's no fun. They want the power. And that's the function of a low evolved, lower conscious being that wants to stay in that. And so the Orion Empire are the beings that will probably never ascend. They kind of act like the pirate ship over everything, and they're just a group that is really kind of trying to mess up the portals and the natural Stargate. So actually, I could go into the whole Dan Burish MJ12 Stargate stuff connected to Looking Glass and their attempt to shut down the natural Stargates. And so this connects to the Mars recruitment. And because of my devotion to keeping the natural Stargates open and going through the Venus cycle of going into the underworld and out, which clears the chakras, they figured getting me off the planet was probably the best thing that they could do. You know, some people say, well, no, they must have invited you for this or that. And I'm like, I'm telling you, I have it in an email. They said it's because of this. And at the Clairvoyant Institute, they said, yeah, it's really weird. You've been clearing wormholes of inorganic entities your whole life. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I've been doing because that's kind of what my book is about, is going into these areas. And we all do this. This is how we clear chakras. All the programming, all the entities, all the things that attach to the true nature of who we are is what we end up clearing. And so the governments that are under the rulership of these lower entities have been attempting to keep the natural Stargates closed so that we can be, of course, a prison planet. And, of course, they're doing everything they can to implement these agendas. And this was another big attempt on their part. And the great thing is not going to Mars. It just keeps, you know, I'm just glad my energy's on Earth because I just don't think I could do as much. And from there, on this level. This is another attempt, the chemtrails. And it's not just, okay, well, it's to block the rays of unity consciousness coming in from the galactic core, because as the frequency barrier lifts and things get in on its axis, the alignment that's happening December 21st is the Earth, Venus, and the Sun all lining up. And during this 7-hour period is a really profound opportunity when the lower and higher worlds merge. And this is when they attempt to block all those levels. So the chemtrails are to keep us sort of shielded from these powerful rays coming in, to also keep us in, you know, a state of fear and anguish, and to also let these nanotechnologies to get into our bodies. And once we're connected into that, we're, you know, connected into the beast computers. And I can just say, for one, I know that this is not going to happen. I already feel like I've been in the future too. And I mean, And there's so many different timelines happening all at once. And this is the beauty of looking glass technologies, is that there's so many possible outcomes. And as we get closer and closer to this critical shift time, the options start to narrow down, and there's timeline 1 and timeline 2, the positive and negative timeline. I only believe in the positive timeline. I do not believe in the negative timeline. Yes, there's a negative timeline as much as there's a negative life experience when we're not fully who we are. Anytime there's negativity, it's usually a subpersonality. It's usually because of some sort of imbalance. It's never something that is a destination. There's no true evil that ever resides as a final destination. This is what alchemy is. It goes into that and it takes it back to its place of origin. And in that cyclical, alchemical transformation, the whole organism is able to vibrate on a divine level. And that's the whole goal of having a physical experience, is for it to be a vessel of the high spirit energy so that we can actually have fun and do amazing things. And this is the gift from the Creator. And so there's been an attempt to overthrow it out of jealousy, out of competition, but that's based on the lessons of duality and who we choose to be in this game. Do we want to be agents to those forces that oppose the Supreme Being, or do we want to embody the energies of God and Goddess and be free? And so they'll twist the information to make it seem maybe not like something we want. They'll create all sorts of new age deceptions so that when we start to maybe go in a spiritual path, all of a sudden we find there's some elements in that spiritual teaching that actually throws us off track. So I just really warn people to pay attention to even the things that seem good and positive, that there might be just a glitch. And I'm not here to teach anybody morals or anything like that, but I think one of the most beautiful things that people can cherish is just the quality of relationship and really paying attention to creating archetypal harmony, recognizing that every single archetype and deity that is out there, we are made of. It's not about looking outside of ourselves. The Christ Sophia consciousness is within. So this is a picture that somebody gave me of the Looking Glass Technologies. It doesn't quite look like all the different versions of it that I've seen. There are different types, but this is one type. And I'm not sure which type they used on me, but yeah, it's their ability to just track energy and information. And they know about the inevitability of our ascension. They're just trying to harvest as many weak minds as they can to empower their empire on whatever level they can get away with. Because we'll move away from it, and they'll still exist, and people will still go in the loop all over again to try and find a way out. But those who are ready are going to go. And I could get into more and more of what I understand about that with the negative polarity, the fourth density positive planet, the fourth density negative planet for them to clear karma. As you could probably tell, I have a lot to share. But this, I don't know if this is what the Mars colony looks like because I didn't take this picture, but somebody obviously probably drew it. My friend Andy Bashago, he's been to Mars a number of times. He was in a project called Project Pegasus starting as a kid. In 1972, he discovered, or he was a part of a conversation that brought me in. I hadn't been born yet. So he tells me in 1972, they brought up him partnering or allying with Laura Eisenhower, the great-granddaughter of Eisenhower, he says, and I hadn't even been born yet. So that's weird on top of the fact that these Mars recruiter were well aware of me before I got to them and my path. So I'm thinking, okay, well, why would Project Pegasus know about me? So there must be some link between Andrew Bashago and the project that I was recruited into. And what we discovered was the Project Pegasus was a childhood project to test children as subjects to teleport them to Mars and to time travel them back and to put them into the future scenarios. There's 8 different types of time travel technology. Everything from jump rooms to chronovisors to the radiant energy field of like a Stargate wormhole type thing. And most of it is Tesla based. So when these incredible inventors and all their technologies were taken in, they were used by these dark forces to set up the secret space program, which is what this recruitment is connected to and what Alternative 3 was connected to and what these treaties with Eisenhower were connected to. So the great thing is that these treaties were signed, but in a way, they didn't really succeed. Because in a way, they were predetermined to include me in them because that's what the Venetians told Eisenhower, so they told me, those who leaked the information. That sounds a little bit far-fetched. I question everything. So we'll see at the end of the day, but it doesn't matter. I'm just a transparent being who just, yeah, it's it's like being a ambassador of the unified field. That's what I consider myself. I'm just a voice for us, for the unified field, and they just saw me as, you know, an example of all of us, and that it's a threat to them because I'm going to stand for the people, and they knew that. So they told me it had something to do with the Dog Star. My recruitment had something to do with Orion and the Dog Star Sirius. And they said something about my connection to the Dog Star. I wasn't quite sure what that meant. But the partner that they set me up with was always talking about Orion, Oberon, and Osiris, and Joseph of Arimathea, and that this whole connection and the need to go to Mars was somehow actually a part of the agenda, almost like the to divide the Christ-Sophia energy. And it's not as benevolent as one might have thought, but this connects back to Glastonbury and the Abbey and some of the manipulations that Joseph of Arimathea went through. So, you know, the thing is, when people are influenced to the negative, and a lot of people that we love and care about are serving the dark side and don't even know it, we have to just look at their heart and look at their intentions and just really forgive, because they do not know that they are serving the dark side most of the time. My ex thought he was serving the light. He thought he was really helping humanity. He thought that this was going to assist. And, you know, when you see somebody under control and we aren't able to discuss this as a humanity, then there's something seriously wrong. So I do believe that it's important to protect the human genome, and I see there's nothing wrong with going to other planets. I'm ready to go all over the solar system. I feel like I already have in a lot of ways, but I'm not going to do it under anybody else's terms, but in the terms where we can all talk about it in a real way. The fact that I wasn't allowed to talk was a huge red flag on top of, I mean, it just was nothing but red flag. But the point is, we have the power to say no. There's no authority voice out there in this world that can tell us what we should or shouldn't do, me included. But all I can say is that we have the capability to set ourselves totally free. We just have to be bold and willing to stand strong and say no. And I seriously wouldn't be here today if that wasn't true, because all the people that are affecting us and doing this through means of media and different technologies, these guys that hold this stuff, you know, after dealing with them one-on-one and getting away from them, it is a lot easier than we think. They just need to be stood up to, because actually they're more scared of us. They wouldn't go through all this trouble unless they were highly intimidated by who we are and what we're worth. And this is the whole attempt. It's like they can't control really except through secrecy and deception. And now that the truth is out, and now that we're remembering who they are, I think the victory is already done, and I think it was done a long time ago. Now it's just cleanup and just, you know, just healing ourselves and just taking a deep breath. So the Venus, at least for me, the Venus, here's the upright version, and like I said, astronomers and astrologers have noticed that the Venus transits create a perfect pentagram in the sky. So if you were to actually draw like a line of where Venus is traveling in the sky, it draws a perfect star just like this one. And so when you're, you know, dealing with those on Earth that are utilizing all that information, knowing that this is what the cosmos is giving us, knowing that naturally, based on cosmic forces, we're all, you know, just on this Earth to be highly conscious divine beings, and these attempts, you know, to invert it and turn the whole axis of the planet the opposite direction, to spin it at antichrist vibration of 11-strand DNA, is not going to happen when this is upright. And this has to be upright for us as individuals to protect ourselves. How do we turn it upright? It's simply a process of climbing into our own darkness and being comfortable with our power. They have made us so intimidated by ourselves that we don't go into that territory. We don't feel we have time. Nobody gives us permission to take a couple weeks off and go into, you know, that dark zone of the mystery and the breath of life, where just being still and being in the now is everything. It's all about action. It's all about doing. It's all so masculine driven that we don't appreciate just the silence of being, just the quiet solitude of just not knowing what tomorrow is going to bring, or not having a plan. I mean, who is sick of like having to do anything and answer to anybody? So this is the beauty of the divine feminine energy. It's all about the breath of life. It's all about the instincts. Creatures know what to do. It's based on instinct. The elements, air, earth, fire, and water, those are the different points of the pentagram. The fifth element is spirit. When the fifth element is intact, everything falls into place, because earth, air, fire, and water come into balance. You put it upside down, the four directions are bewilderment, fear, sorrow, and just suffering, basically. And then because the element of spirit is down into the ground, it just shows the power of the darkness is in rulership and that the light is buried. So in order to turn that around within all of ourselves, we just simply have to turn everything that we've been hiding, everything that we've been holding on to, everything that, we're afraid of being, and we need to just step up and be bold and turn it upright again and empower our spiritual nature. It's not about reading some book or having some great yoga experience. I mean, it has nothing to do with what we do. It just has to do with just being just who we are. I mean, it's as natural as anything. It's not something we attain. We already are there. And that's a part of the deception, is that we have to work so hard to attain something. But we were born this way. There has been a plot to make us forget. All we simply need to do is remember. And then things start to fall into place, and we're inspired to take better care of ourselves. We're inspired to see things through a different light. Instead of feeling helpless or confused, it's like we don't need any of that anymore. There's nobody but us to determine what's going to happen. And the beauty is, everybody around the world got really sick of what's been going on and been taking a stand. Everybody takes a stand in their own way based on how it affects our personal life. Luckily for me, my personal life was so affected that I get a whole big gamut to share. But it's great because, each of us are experiencing the same thing on some level. It's just like unbelievable. So here's, the Occupy movement, and then of course, it could be a controlled movement just because they, are planning the economic collapse, and they probably saw this coming, but it doesn't matter. Who cares what they know? Who cares what they are setting up for us? The point is, when things go negative, to really watch ourselves, because they do feed on our hopes and our fears. And we have to remember that the end game has nothing to do with enslavement or fear. It has to do with not fearing death. As the frequency barrier lifts, as the veils lift, the differentiation between life and death changes and alters. We don't have to be going through the cycle of life and death so much. When we lift off into the fourth and fifth density, we can come and go as we please. We can take physical bodies or non-physical bodies like we used to. Once the Anunnaki came and the frequency barrier came into play, it all changed. We've been locked in an incarnation cycle based on the zodiac and the tree of good and evil ever since. Now that the tree is getting restored, it puts us back into our immortal self. It doesn't mean that we're going to have the same flesh for thousands and thousands of years. It means that on a spirit level, we're so conscious that we don't recognize the whole cycle of having to be babies again and having to start from scratch, that we carry consciousness with us, and it's something that we don't lose and have to regain again and again. That's part of their plot, because when we're born, the whole goal is that we are raised to forget. And some of us, didn't forget, and that's what they weren't able to stop. And, and that's why I always said, I think the Mars agenda is like plan C or D, and, for all I know, they were going to, grab a whole bunch of us, or maybe set me up to grab all of you and take with me. I mean, who knows? What's that? Yeah. Well, we're going to go to Mars in a different way, and I can tell you that later. And first of all, the beauty is, all the planetary systems. If anybody's seen, Sophia and what she represents, she's got the whole star, the whole zodiac around her head, and all these planetary systems are connected to her. And I would recommend that nobody goes with the global elite, but they go in the real way, which is what they're going to initiate themselves into when they become the cosmic beings that we truly are, in connection with our universal family, because the sky is the limit, and we can go everywhere, but we don't have to do it under their terms or under their fear tactics, because it's all a lie. So I really appreciate everybody listening.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. So thanks again.